All right, hey Brown, let's get started. So a few logistical notes before we start. There was a segment for a live review of this workshop at between 6 and 7 last night. There is no, or sorry, for a review video, there is no review video for this workshop, or possibly there is one, but it's very old. Anyway, we didn't have one. So we're going to do a live review this morning, and then the intro to React lecture will be slightly shorter, but that I think will be okay because that is 2 hours is a long lecture, and an hour and a half will be shorter. What else? Oh, so I have posted a link to my YouTube channel in your library, where sometimes I don't remember to put links to the videos like in the library, which sorry about that. I'll try and update those, but also they all go to my channel immediately. So you can go there, you can see the live stream, and you can also like follow the link to the rest of these videos. Like and subscribe. I actually have an embarrassingly crap YouTube presence that we will perhaps fix at some point. All right, who liked Worldwide Whiteboard? One. Oh, sorry. Oh, some people, yeah. It's kind of fun, right? There's like a little bit of fun inside of it. Who has questions about Worldwide Whiteboard? Things you want me to touch on? Yeah.
We got stuck at, like, I guess, towards the end where we're trying to get your drawing to show up on a screen and vice versa.
Okay, like trying to connect to someone else's whiteboard instance.
Like, well, we were getting it to actually show getting it to emit, like, broadcast emit.
Okay, emitting broadcast, or like broadcast emit stuff. Okay, yeah. The disconnect. Okay, so this is like. Is that that's a console log, right? It's not, it doesn't show up here. Yeah. Okay, so get disconnect events. Yeah, my guess is you have to listen to these on the client socket, not the master socket, I think. So that's probably it, I think. Yeah.
So there's a lot of history over like how WebSockets work as far as keeping that connection open.
Yeah.
Can we go through that using the on in the mid?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we'll do that in the lecture with like WebSockets, like how do WebSockets connect to the socket IO on emit stuff, on /emit stuff. All right, anything else?
Making it easier.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. This basically looks like the workshop. So great, we're about to touch on all of these things. Okay, so I've started the server. There's for a moment to me, confusing red line in it, which I think is just happening because we have, we have a single red stroke from 0, 0 to 250, 250. If we don't have that, then we're fine. Wow, NodeMon is really irritating when you're constantly changing stuff. Okay, so next, I guess what do we want to do first? First, let's, we'll need to put in socket IO so that we can kind of connect this whiteboard, which we can already draw on, to the server, and then bounce the events off the server to all of the connected whiteboards on the clients. So let's install socket IO first. Is it socket.io? Okay. And then let's look at the documentation for socket IO because I kind of don't remember it. And getting started. Great. Here's your server. Sweet. Serve HTML. This is like an intro to Express, and it's not what I need. Integrating socket.io, there we go. Okay, install socket.io. Okay, we're going to take the HTTP server, which I think we have conveniently in server.js. Yeah, here's our server, and it should be able to be like IO equals require socket IO, and then pass in the server. Does that look right? Yeah. If I use a keyword rather than cont. Oh. Meanwhile, there's some part of this that needs to be written in C, I guess. Whenever you see this node jip rebuild, it means that there is a part of that npm that is written in C. So it, usually to access some level library or because it needs to be faster, like for performance reasons. And jip is the node, it's like the node build system. So it was Chrome's build system, and now it's Node took it. And so it's using your C compiler. That's why those installs take a while. Okay, so this should create, like, enable us to serve socket IO, and we can say, like, when we get a connection, we'll do it in here. Connection. Socket connected. Okay. Really? Fine. I'm pretty dogmatic about how much space I like. Okay, so now when if we're watching our terminal and we restart, nothing happens because we're not connecting on the client. Right, that's what we would expect. So now on the client, let's throw this in. We'll add our script tag, which I believe is going to load, oh, maybe actually this will have to be, actually, is this what they had you do, or did they have you import it? Okay. I think you can also import it, which maybe actually would be better, but let's try this. I think actually then this has to go before the static, doesn't it? Because otherwise this is going to fail. Here, let's try both ways. I think this might not work, but let's see. So now when I reload this page, and let's just go to socket.io, socket.io.js. Oh, hey, great. There's the client library. So this is like another bundle in addition to our bundle that's going to get served to the client. And then in our index.js on the client, we can do whatever thing it is this documentation tells us to do. Oh, just call IO. Great. So socket equals IO. And now when I reload, great. Now it's telling us that, wow, this is the socket object, and it is not small, but it is connected. So maybe I'll just print the ID. That sounds shorter. Socket ID connected. Great. And then I think in order to listen for disconnection, we have to do it in here. So we can be like socket.onDisconnect. Let's just be like, get the ID from the socket, we connected, and then let's actually do it this way. Connected ID, disconnected ID. Yeah, so now we're getting disconnected events. You may have tried to do io.onDisconnect, and that won't work because this event emitter, the sort of master server event emitter, is not disconnecting. this socket, the socket for the individual client, is disconnecting. Does that make sense? So like when we listen for, like when we emit stuff to a particular socket or to a particular client, or when we receive data from a particular client, we're going to be using this socket. A disconnection is basically some event happening between us and a particular client. So that event happens on this event emitter. Yeah. Yeah, so line 16 is setting up socket IO on our Express server. So, yeah, so it does a few things. It's installing middleware. Fundamentally, it just installs middleware, or it might even just be like wrapping all of Express. And one thing that it's doing is it's serving this bundle. It like says, okay, on any request to socket.io, what did I do? The listener argument must go. On any request for /socket.io /socket.io.js, serve the client library. So that's one thing it does. The other thing it does is it adds support for that WebSocket upgrade connection business we saw in the lecture yesterday, so that when the client library, which is also serving, tries to upgrade a connection to WebSockets, our server, its code runs, and it establishes a connection, and it emits an event, which contains a event emitter, the socket that represents that connection. So now I can do stuff on this. Like I can say socket.emit hello, and maybe I'll do like the date.now or something. And in our client, I can be like socket.on, it's just on hello. I can be like log server said hi at the timestamp. And so now we should have, okay, so now we're getting a connected event here, and then if we look at the client's console, eventually, some terrible thing happens. But only 0 present. Why did we call draw at all? Oh, I see. That was me. Server said hi at some timestamp, which we could check to make sure that it's this timestamp, but I'm pretty sure it is. So that's so what happened here. I don't know if there's a way to see this in the network tab. You can find out. Headers. Get this. Yeah, there's like a better WebSocket like panel that you can install. I don't know if this. Oh, WebSockets. Here we go. Great. So these are WebSocket and frames. All. Here, let's reload. Maybe this will do it, actually. Frames. Oh, there. Oh, yay. Great. So, 3probe5.2, I really don't know what's going on here, TBH, but whenever we send data, whenever we emit from the server and receive it on the client, or vice versa, it turns into a WebSocket frame, which gets sent over this socket connection that has been established by the client library to the server. And the reason this is kind of inscrutable and we don't see a timestamp or like hello here, it's not actually completely clear to me why we don't see a little more. Like, let's try, I wonder if we're just like not seeing that frame. Let's try adding, let's make this workshop work and we'll see if we get more data here. What we're seeing is that Socket.io, the library, actually is abstracting away some of the nitty-gritty details of the WebSocket protocol. So the data we see here is not exactly going to look like what we're sending. It'll be what we're sending mangled in some way. There's probably like a Socket.io DevTools extension at this point, which would show us more clearly, like, or at a higher level, the data that's being sent. But let's not, we don't really need to inspect that right now. So let's, oh, great. Sorry, I was like, I drew something. Are we gonna see stuff? No, we haven't wired any of that up. Yeah. Yeah, so on the server, I just said socket.emit hello. And this is arbitrary. I could call this anything. I can emit tofu. And then on the client, to catch that event, so now when I reload the client, I'm not going to see server set hi, because we're listening for a hello event, but we're getting a tofu event, which just falls on the floor. But if I do say on tofu, and I say server set soy, now, well, yeah. So what happens is when line 6 evaluates, we establish a connection to the server. So in the server, that causes this event to fire. The Socket.io library has gone and like established a WebSocket connection and created this socket data structure that we can send and receive events through. And then we print something on the server saying this is connected. And then we say, okay, when we receive a disconnect event from this socket, print disconnected. Disconnect will only happen when we like actually like disconnect, which we could call socket.disconnect, I think, here, probably, or we could, yeah, actually, we could, we'll try that in a second. We can explicitly disconnect, or we disconnect when the page closes. And then we emit this event, the tofu event, which gets received here. And we could make sort of a simple one-shot protocol where we say, okay, after the server says tofu, we say we disconnect. I hope that's a thing, which should cause the server to print that we disconnected. It might also not be a thing. Oh yeah, there. So we get that the server said something, and then we disconnect, and now subsequent events, like if the server says tofu again, we won't get it. But I actually wonder what will happen. Like if we do socket.emit tofu, still there. This event is swallowed. There might even be an error on the server side. Okay, there's no error, but we don't get it. However, this is not what we want to do with our lives. Instead, we want to send all these drawing events over. Okay, so on disconnect, we'll print that someone disconnected. Let's call this hello again. Okay, so any other questions about like setting up the sockets before we get into events from the whiteboard? All right, so our whiteboard is giving us a stream of events as well. I don't remember what they are, but let's find out. Set up a canvas, draws a line. We've got some state, we've got a setup function. And let's just look at what gets emitted. Oh, there's just one thing. It emits a draw event with start, end, and stroke color. Okay, cool. So presumably that means that if I call whiteboard on draw logit, I should see all the drawing events here. Yep, that looks great. And if I say on draw socket.emit draw, it will now emit drawing events to the server. I need to reload, I guess. Oh, have you seen this syntax before? Okay, cool. This is collecting all of the arguments and then spreading all of the arguments. Oh yeah, so we're not listening for draw on the server. We can listen for draw on the server. Let's just print it right now. So socket on draw console log. So when I reload and then start drawing, I see all of my draw events. Oh. Is that a bug that you experienced? Where it looks as though it doesn't register the mouse up somehow? Or it sometimes doesn't? I guess it sometimes does. Okay, whatever. That's not our problem. It's my problem. I wrote the whiteboard code. Okay. So now we have I think we have like a relatively straightforward path now because we have these draw commands and we have a command on the whiteboard that takes, let's see, this is start, this is end, this is the stroke color, and should broadcast is the last thing. So if we sort of pipe these back to draw, so I guess we have to do two things. Thing one is the server needs to re-emit these events to everyone who's connected. And thing two is those clients need to listen for draw on the server and draw to their own whiteboards. So the first step, let's bridge the first thing. And on the server, we'll say that, okay, when we get a draw event, we'll do, what is it? Is it io.broad? No. Socket.broad. We'll send it to all other sockets in the namespace except yourself. That sounds great. .emit. So whatever args we got, emit those, emit draw with those args. And then on the client side, we'll say that when we get a draw event from the server, let's just log it for now. So I'll reload, and then now I should basically see all my draw events, but they're bouncing back off the server. But I don't see anything, nothing at all. That's very disappointing. Why? What's happening on the server? So when we get a draw event, broadcast it. Oh, it goes to everyone except ourselves, which means that we need to have another tab should do it, but I kind of, here. Mission control, split screen is no longer sufficient, sorry. My window manager thing is broken. Okay. Okay, so here's one tab, and then, or here's one window, here's another. So now maybe when I draw on this, oh yeah, great. So when I draw on one panel, I get the events in the other. But I don't get the events in the panel that I drew from. That's great. So questions on why that's working, or how that's working. Yeah, let me just, sorry, I'm very disoriented because I usually have these keys bound and they're not doing the thing. Yeah, so here we've got, oh, there, finally. Yeah, so on the right is the server, on the left is the client. And the flow is the client connects, and then that causes, this might be confusing later, but for now, and then that causes the server receives the client connection and creates, creates a socket object, which it emits from the like IO. I don't even exactly know what to call it, emitter. Which means this runs, and then we listen for draw events from this client. 3A. No. Listen for disconnect events from this client. And then say hi to this client, hello to this client. And then the client receives hello. Actually, this is happening. This is all asynchronous, so sequencing this is kind of hard. This actually happens right after the connection is made. Listen for draw events from server. Oh, this is 1C. Listen for hello events from server. Listen for draw events. Oh, sorry, this is from the whiteboard. And send them to server. Listen for draw events from the server. And log them. So creating a sequence was a little bit more confusing than I expected because there isn't like a strict sequence between these things, right? They're kind of running in parallel. Except some of them there is, right? Like this hello definitely has to run before this listener runs, because this listener only runs when hello events are sent. So when I draw on the whiteboard, the sequence of events is the whiteboard does its thing, it emits this draw event, which calls our listener. I'm going to call it stroke. And our listener runs emitting the draw event to the server, which then broadcasts it to all other sockets. That's what broadcast does. It sends a draw event there, which causes this on draw event handler to run on every other browser than ours, than the one that emitted it. Yeah.
Why are you doing this socket on the client side, like mainly because the broadcasting it sends back to everyone but the original.
Right. Right. So we won't receive this event on the client that originated it, but we will receive it on all the others.
Oh, okay. So this client file is everything. It's not just like
Yeah. It's for all of them. Yeah.
because right now you've got like that way and that way and that way again.
Yeah.
Could you have just gone like to the server, which sends everything back to the client, and the client just draws with that information directly back on it?
So that's what's about to happen. Right now we are not drawing these events, we're just printing them. So that's why if we go look, like when I draw on one, I get the events in the other, like they're printed, but nothing is drawn over here.
So if you missed the step, I think I missed the like sending it back again.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What do you do if you don't send it?
If you don't broadcast it back?
Yeah.
Everything. Every step of the chain is important. If you don't send it back, then other clients will not receive those events, which is the thing that must happen for the whiteboard to be collaborative.
I guess I didn't mean. Oh no, I didn't. Never mind.
Okay, we can take a look at that. Yeah.
What is connecting these two files?
The fact that, so basically this is, and the fact that this IO object is actually coming from, it's coming from the socket IO library, so it's kind of initialized in such a way that it will connect to here, because this middleware that's getting set up on our server is serving this library to be able to connect to it. And also they're being served from the same domain, so this JavaScript can talk to this server and will. Yeah. So in this case, the connection is happening because the client library is set up to connect to it. I think we could also like import the client library and just use it directly without hitting this middleware. In which case, it knows, like when we go and look at the let's see, when we go and look at the network tab, this thing. Oh, hey, check that out. Here are our draw events. Isn't that great? So when we look at the connection, it's connecting to the same place as our server because it tried to connect to, it just goes to /socket.io and then this is like a query string that contains some information about like how it wants to connect. And it just always does this. This is what the socket.io client library does, which means it's going to hit the socket.io middleware on our server, and that's going to fire events to the event emitter listeners that we've set up on our server. If this went to a different URL, then we would talk to a different server. But because it's going to / and we are serving on localhost 1337, it's going to hit our code. Does that kind of Well, yeah.
What kind of situation would you need to do when you did like IO.on and yeah.
Yep.
Like, would you ever using that open up like two sockets, like do another one of those, or do you just kind of end up doing everything inside of that?
You could. So you can have as many listeners as you want, and typically you would do that if you wanted to have you wanted to separate concerns in some way. Like maybe I want this like connected and disconnected. Maybe I want those events to happen in some other file. Maybe I have like more extensive logging that I want to sort of separate out of here. And then yeah, I could have another listener and just move the connection thing down there, and then move this down there. And this will have basically the same, it'll do the same thing, but now it's doing it sort of asynchronously. It's like we've separated out these two behaviors. And this should still work. Oh, I'm using that down there. Anyway, it's still trying to connect, right? It's still running this listener. I'm gonna make them one again though, because I think we actually want the logging events in here. Yeah. Wait, did I say hi? No, there was just gesticulation over there. Okay. Okay, so let's close the loop. And what does that entail? Oh, yeah, instead of calling draw here, or instead of calling log here, we should just draw, which might just be that. Is that all we have to do? Let's try it. That seems like that might be all we need to do. Yeah, there we go. Oh, let's draw something on this side. Yay, collaborative whiteboard. And that kind of, it sort of like feels like it's working like magic, mostly because, oh, wait. I think actually we have some terrible thing happening now, which might be about to crash my browser, but will sort of be persisting this drawing, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, wow, the drawing's persisting. How is that happening? No, what's happening is really not great. Let's look at our network tab before my browser crashes, which is probably about to happen. Oh, damn it. No. I forgot to do something. Everything is slow. This is not how it's supposed to be. Why is this happening to me? What did I forget to do? What's that? The connection is okay. So I think if this ever wakes up, we'll see just a stream of events going through. Yep, there it is. Slowly, because everything is slow. So there's this extra parameter in draw, should broadcast. Why is that there? Yeah, so what's happening? I draw a stroke on one of these tabs. That sends a draw event to the server. Okay, so whiteboard on draw, here's the stroke, emit draw to the server. The server receives that draw event and broadcasts it to all clients, which receive that draw event. They draw on the whiteboard. We don't say should broadcast false, and so that causes a draw event to occur from their whiteboard, which is emitted to the server, which then broadcasts it to all other clients, which then draw on their whiteboard, which emits a draw event, which sends it to the server. And that's why my browser is crashing right now, and why this is an endless stream of events. Have you ever seen and that's also why we get this sort of persistence. Have you ever seen that episode of Star Trek Next Generation where Scotty is held in a pattern buffer? Anyone? Please tell me at least one. Oh, thank God. That's basically what's going on right now. This drawing is being held in the pattern buffer, constantly exchanged in these events between the server and client. And so when a new socket connects, it receives all those events because they're constantly streaming between the server and all of the clients, which is not actually good. My browser is about to crash. So we can fix that fairly easily by being like, here's the stroke. Please, oh, wow, typing is hard. Please draw the stroke, but then don't broadcast it. And then reload, please reload. I guess the thing is, it's slow because it's doing a lot of work. It's basically constantly redrawing this drawing, more or less as fast as it can. But it's not, I don't think it's allocating more space constantly. It's not growing. So it's just very wasteful, but not the end of the world. Okay, so that just crashed. Okay, so if I draw, oh shit. Yeah, now I think when I open one, okay, so that's first of all a lot faster, and second of all, when I open a new tab, there's nothing. And it'll get new events, but it doesn't know the current state of the drawing. If I wanted to change that, what I could do is in the server, I mean, there's a lot of ways. I could just store a history of events, and whenever anyone broadcasts a stroke, I'll say history.push stroke. And then whenever someone connects, so we say hello, and then we'll bring the client up to date. We can do history for each thing in the history. Socket.broadcast.emit draw with the stroke. No, I just created it up here, yeah. It's the drawing. Damn it. Why? It's very disappointing.
What did you say the setting was? False. Stop the feedback.
This one, should broadcast, is false, yeah. For each stroke, socket, broadcast, emit, draw with that stroke, not what we're doing here. Yes. Oh. Sorry, we actually want socket.emit. We don't want to broadcast it. That sends it to everyone except the socket that just connected. We want to just send it to the socket that connected. And now maybe it'll work. But I think the server restarted, so there's nothing in the buffer. Yay. So that's just a matter of having this history and then adding to it whenever there's a draw event and then replaying it here.
Sorry, how did you get that to only show, is emit specifically only communication between the connections?
Yeah, so socket.emit sends it only to the socket. Socket.broadcast.emit sends it to every socket except this one. Yeah, so that was not what I wanted in this case. Okay. Any final questions? Did we get to all of these? Broadcast emit sends to everyone but me. Emit sends to just me. Disconnect events have to happen on that socket. I don't know if we fully covered this, but I encourage you to dig into the network tab and look at these WebSocket events if you're curious. It's like network, and then look at one of these, and then you can check out what's going on. And this is like, WebSockets is a framed protocol, so basically this says, I think it's saying that there's like 42 characters, and then it sends JSON, something like that. It's not like a very complicated protocol. It's io.on connection, and then when there's a new connection, bring this new client up to date. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what they would be. It's mostly listening for a connection. Yeah. There might be others, but they would probably be like server maintenance kind of stuff. Yeah, and then persistence, you keep this log. All right. Cool. So now we're going to move from the front end into the front end. We're going to move from talking about sockets to sort of back into a world of RESTful backends and then a bunch of HTML. But this time we're going to be using React to manage the front end. And I think Aaron is going to come and give an intro to that. But yeah, take a 5-minute break and get excited for React. No, that's okay.